Imagine, if you will, being awoke at 2 o'clock in the morning by someone standing outside your apartment building yelling, "Fire! Fire!" That is exactly what happened to me. I was having a really strange dream and woke up very groggily, and I thought, what in the heck is this guy yelling about? I was going to investigate. As I sat up in bed to get out, I was hit by the most noxious smell I have ever smelled in my entire life. I thought, whoa, now I'm so disoriented, but even more determined to figure out exactly what is going on, because I still have no idea what this guy is yelling about, and what the heck is that smell? I got out of bed, and I walked to my front door, and as I got there, I made it just in time to hear the sound of breaking glass and to see flames jumping up to my second-story balcony. The very worst thing that I could ever imagine happening was the apartment downstairs from me was on fire, and it seemed that mine would be shortly as well. After that, I was pretty much wide awake and in complete panic, and I thought, oh my gosh, what do I do next? Boots. Boots are going to be a good idea. I put on my boots, and I thought it later very fortunate that I happened to wear pajamas to bed. Next thing I thought is my cats. I have to get my cats out of here because I knew that by that time the fire was already so bad that if I left them in the house, they probably weren't going to make it. My plan was I was going to take them out to my car because my car was far enough away from the burning building and I knew that they would be safe there. Luckily for me, they weren't hiding, but they were none too happy with the state of current events that were occurring in my apartment just at that moment. And as I scooped them up, we ran past the fire. And of course, they could hear the fire, they could see the fire, and they could feel the fire. And they let me know that they were completely freaked out at this moment by giving me some very lovely scratches that were also very painful. And I still have the scars from that today. After I got them in the car, safe and sound, I did the most dumb, the most stupid, lamest thing that you should never do. And that is, I ran back into a burning apartment to get my ID because I thought, oh my gosh, if I'm going to be homeless in the next 5 minutes, I've got to have somebody to prove that I'm me. I ran back up the stairs into my apartment. As I did so, the flames were still about balcony high, and they were about 3 feet from my person. In the less than 1 minute that it took me to run in, grab my handbag, and run out, the fire had grown exponentially. The flames were now above the roof of my apartment, and they were about 3 inches from my person. And as I ran down the stairs, I thought, my gosh, my arm's kind of warm. I noticed that my pajamas were actually singed. I was a little panicked, but I was okay. I ran down to the courtyard of our apartment building just in time to have the fire department arrive. And as I stood there in my boots, with no socks, my pajamas, in the 20-degree weather, I thought, this has to be what it's like to live in a nightmare. The fire was eventually put out. The downstairs unit was completely gutted, and mine was rendered unlivable. I had sustained a lot of smoke damage, and the department actually had to punch holes in my walls to make sure that the fire wasn't creeping up inside. The fire department escorted me back into my place so I could gather some things and find a safe and warm place to stay for the night. And as I was up there, they told me how the fire started. And the fire started in the downstairs unit. A sofa had been placed up against a baseboard heater. Newspapers had been allowed to fall behind the sofa, and then of course the heater was turned on because it was so cold. And that rancid, horrid smell, I knew that my downstairs neighbor Mohammed was a record DJ. Those were his burning and melted record albums. And as I was up there gathering my things, I had no idea that the worst was still yet to come. My downstairs neighbor Mohammed and his girlfriend rounded the corner, and the blood-curdling scream that I heard next was absolutely unbearable. I went down to try to console Mohammed, and he told me that he was absolutely devastated. He didn't really care about his stuff. What he was most concerned about was Miles, his cat. He normally left the window open just a little bit so she could run in and out as she pleased. However, that night, he closed the window because it was so cold and he had the heat turned on. Miles was gone. She had perished in the fire, and all I could do was cry with Mohammed. I was absolutely devastated by what was happening to Mo and myself. I thought, how in the heck are we ever going to recover from this and move on with our lives? But you know what? We did. And how I moved on is 6 months later, I ended up buying my first house. It was a lot sooner than I anticipated. However, I thought, if anybody's going to burn me out of my house, it's going to be me. And for Mo, the most amazing thing started happening. People started donating to his collection, complete strangers, so he could continue to work. He was absolutely in awe by their generosity. There's a quote by Robert Frost that really sums this experience up for me. And he says, "Everything I have learned in life can be summed up in 3 short words. It goes on." And yes, it does. Mo, his apartment was gone, and so he had to find a new place to live. He did, just right down the street from me. And so we decided that we were going to get together once a week for coffee to console each other and be each other's cheerleaders when the good things happened to us. After a few months, he told me that he had become a much better housekeeper because there's something that he really wanted. And I said, "Well, what is it, Mo? Tell me." Just then, he slid across a picture on the table. He showed me a little orange tabby that he had just got the week before, and he had named her Blaze. Mr. Toastmaster.